how are you going to mine in a space where you have no place to put the tailings? And in the third book, he just like casually mentions, he's like, oh yeah, well, they just like grind it into dust and send it out the exhaust fans at the top of the silo. Whoa, you shouldn't have said that. Like the amount of energy.
And that's why the third book is called Dust. Hello, everybody. I'm Cody Troyer.
And I'm Brent Gaisford.
And we are the Hugonauts.
This episode, we are talking about the Silo series by Hugh Howey, also of Apple TV show fame. They are each about 500 to 600 pages, 15-ish hours on audiobook. There's 3 books. Third one's a little bit shorter. Yeah, that's what we're doing.
Yep. And next time we're going to talk about a true classic, William Gibson's Neuromancer. And if I have my way, also Count Zero and Mona Lisa Overdrive, because the whole trilogy is fantastic.
We'll see how fast I can read. I've read them all, but it's been a long time. Ladies and gentlemen, we'll see. Okay.
Yep.
And this episode is sponsored by the new sci-fantasy novel, The Song of Immaru, Earth's Door by P.J. Dudek.
Earth's Door is a sci-fi fantasy and psychological thriller that reads like a mashup of Stranger Things with the cast of The X-Files. It won a Gold Literary Titan Award and Silver Florida Authors and Publishers Association Award.
You can learn more about Earth's Door at pjdudek.com, and the book is available in hardback, audiobook, and ebook via the Amazon link in the episode notes.
Okay, let's talk about a series of books which has divided us more than maybe anything we've ever reviewed on the show. Because I gave Silo the series a 4 out of 5. I thought it was just basically purely on the mysteries and the twists and the plot and the core idea. I really enjoyed the novels. They were such page turners to me. And you...
Yeah, we're trying something different here. Normally, we try to make sure both of us at least like a book a little bit to cover it on the show. I actively dislike this series a lot. I'm going to give it a 2 out of 5. We're going to keep it fun. We're going to keep it entertaining. Cody and I have a long-standing 20-plus year friendship. We think it can survive what is about to happen. But we'll find out.
Should we get into it?
Yeah. All right. Okay. So this summary is going to be really short because these are plot-driven books. But yeah. Okay. So it's set in a silo, buried in the earth. And it's all self-contained, and you're following some characters inside it. It seems like there's been some sort of disaster outside. The outside world is not safe. But the people inside are behaving strangely. There's some strange stuff going on, and you start to think pretty early that something else is happening here. Like they're getting tricked and misled in a way that, is not exactly clear, but you sure want to find out. So I think that's where we should leave kind of the summary. Do you think you throw anything else in there?
No, I mean, it's a pretty spoiler-heavy book. There's going to be a long post-spoilers for this episode, or longer than pre, probably, just because, that's kind of why we're here, is to find out the mysteries that stack upon one another.
Like the levels in the silo.
Like the levels in the silo, of which there are 144, which seems low.
Yeah, low.
Seems hard to pull off.
Well, I mean, you could surely build that big a structure, but I think so I have 2 big things that held this series back for me. One is suspension of disbelief, and this is actually less intense than my other complaint, but let's talk about it with the 144 levels. So we're following the mayor, and she lives at the top on level 1, right by the surface, and she has to go to the down deep, down 140 levels. And it's going to take her, is it 2 or 3 days to walk down?
Couple of days.
Yeah. And it's what did Hugh Howey not think about it at all? How long it takes to walk down a flight of stairs? Walking down 140 flights of stairs takes 2 hours. Definitely not 2 entire days.
For a little bit of context here, Brent is I don't know if I want to say mountaineer. I just love to climb mountains.
I aspire to be a mountaineer. That'd be sick.
You like to climb mountains, and so one of the notes that popped out to me of yours was, at one point they say it takes 4 hours to climb 30 levels, which implies about 4,000 feet of elevation. That would make the silos about 20,000 foot deep. LOL.
Yeah. Well, that's ridiculous. Like each floor is so. Yeah, that just like, and that sort of stuff just keeps happening like over and over and over.
So here's the thing.
Yeah.
Here's the thing. We talk about this sometimes. I can't remember the last time we talked about it, but there was a suspension of disbelief battle between you and I. And I do agree in retrospect that it's clear that a lot of stuff that could have been easy to think through was not. Or maybe it just was inconvenient. It's like, well, yeah, but I got to put the farms here and I want it to be really deep feeling and I need the thing to take a couple days because it feels like old school tech, even though we're in this new silo. So what's going on here? It adds to the mystery. So I can see where Howie's coming from. And then like some of that stuff, if you look into it too much, it's like, well, that doesn't make any sense. But I didn't mind. I just was riveted by the kind of design of this space, the location, the idea that people are there, why they're there, how they're acting while they're there. It's like it's clearly in the future, but also they seem to be living a little bit more archaically, even though they have technology. There's a low availability of resources. So all that stuff intrigued me. And if I'm intrigued and it's clipping along at a nice pace, I just don't think too much about the other suspension of disbeliefy stuff. Or I think about it and I'm like, that's silly. But I still enjoy, it didn't pull me out this time. It does sometimes.
Yeah, there was just so many in this one that I just kept being like, there was another one. Here's a good one that we can do. I have a couple more that I think are good examples and no spoilers and fun. One is, he just like casually mentions at one point in the third book, he's like, oh, well, none of the people from the mids or the up top have ever they never go to the down deep. Why would they? And it was like, who do you hang out with? That like they spend their entire lives living in this place and you don't think any of those people would just wander around a little? Like what humans does Hugh Howey hang out with?
That I don't know if I agree with, because I do feel like the way we organize ourselves socially, if there's a hierarchy, social hierarchy to being higher up, which there is in the series, versus farther down, you'd see why there'd be an aversion to people who are higher up of going down, because it's frowned upon in so they would
just
society.
like live in their the two football fields at the top and just like never be curious. It's just, well, and they're just
I don't know, that's what they're used to. I mean, we read a lot of spaceship books where they're in a much smaller space and they're just
but they know how big it is,
ships.
And they don't like just choose not to go into the other big part. Yeah, as I'm saying that, it's like, it's actually like a core part of the book is that the people like don't ask too many questions or like be too curious. Like the whole thing sort of falls apart if people get too curious. And that's actually what our main characters are doing that makes them the heroes, is they are like, something seems wrong. Let me poke around. But I just had trouble accepting that like any of the people in the silo at any point would be like not curious about this. Cause like, anyway. If we remember, let's take that to the post spoilers, because I think there's an interesting counterpoint to that, but it's a little bit spoily. I guess okay. the non spoiler way to bring it up would be to just say, I feel like there's ostensibly at least a reason for why that makes sense. Even though maybe that's also thin. At least it's like, at least it's acknowledged. yes, for sure. Hold on, wait, one more. My favorite one.
Okay.
So it's mentioned all through the series that they're, so they have an oil well. So they use oil for energy. And they also mention, like just early first book, whatever, so no spoilers, that they have mines. So they're like mining for raw materials, new metal and stuff. Mm-hmm. And I didn't think too much about that. But then in the third book, they like go into a little bit more detail about it. And I hadn't thought about the fact that like, obviously, like how are you going to mine in a space where you have no place to put the tailings? And in the third book, he just like casually mentions, he's like, oh yeah, well, they just like grind it into dust and send it out the exhaust fans at the top of the silo. I was like, whoa, you shouldn't have said that, dude. That's the craziest thing I've ever heard. Like,
and that's why the third book is called Dust.
The amount of energy required to like turn raw earth into dust and then send it up the 20,000 foot tall silo to the surface. Anyway,
it's high. It's high.
It is high. Yeah.
It's more than 20,000 feet of elevation gain.
Okay, but so no, real talk though. So as you were going through the book, like, did you notice stuff that you were like, but you were just like not worried about it? Or were you just like immersed in the plot enough that you just didn't think about it? And that's not a criticism. Like, that's like, the plot is interesting. I have, there's more stuff to talk about, but like, yeah, I'm just curious, like, as you were reading, how it felt for you.
Okay, so I'm gonna tack this into our next point, which is I'm just gonna tell you my experience in reading it, because I think it greatly affects how I felt about the books. Yes, I was immersed in the plot and I wanted to know the mysteries. However, I will say, I think the television show, which is on Apple TV Plus, you didn't add the plus earlier. I don't know why every streaming service thinks they need the plus and Tim Apple. Yeah, I don't know why they all think they need the plus, but they do, apparently. Anyways, it's really well done, I thought. The production design is great. The acting is great. It stars Rebecca Ferguson, who was, I guess, who like went out and wanted to make this. She's one of the producers. Rebecca Ferguson, you may also remember as the mother in Dune, Jessica, in the Villeneuve Dunes. Anyway, she's great. And there's the rest of the characters are fantastic. And I watched the first like 6 episodes, whatever was out. They were releasing a week at a time. So I watched those. And the reason I read the trilogy is because I deeply needed to know what happened. And I realized that I could just read them. And before like 2 more episodes had come out, I'd finished the trilogy. And so I knew all the answers. I think the reason that I was able to look past a lot of stuff is because I'd already got into it with the show. I had some of the visuals, the characters. When there were parts in the book where the characters were a little more thin, there wasn't as much depth to them, there wasn't as much backstory. There's a lot added in the show that really the show fleshes out the characters well. I was able to just dismiss it because I was already invested in them from the show.
Okay, interesting. Okay, so that makes sense. Yeah.
So that's a long-winded way of saying of getting to the next point, which is I think the show is maybe better. I'm not sure, but it's also a book series that's clearly like lends itself to screen.
Yeah, I mean, we'll talk more about this later on, but like we actually had a lot of trouble thinking of good book recommendations because it's like a TV show or a movie. Like that's what it is.
Yeah, it's a media potpourri recommendations coming up at the end for those of you who do other media. What did you think of the premise, though? Let's start with the premise because that's why it makes a good show. That's why it riveted me. What?
Yeah, I like the premise. I think part of actually why this didn't hit as well for me. So first of all, I didn't watch the TV show first, so I like didn't have that primer. I was just reading the books. But also, it didn't feel like fresh media to me because I have played all. That's not true. I think I started playing with Fallout 3, but I played a lot of the Fallout video games, and a lot of the Fallout video games have like side plots and stuff that are super reminiscent of this book series. And so the idea of just like, oh, there's people living in underground vaults who are surviving like the apocalypse, and then there's people in charge of the vaults who are fucking with them. Oops, sorry. Sorry, Cody. Sorry, future Cody who has to edit that. I spent a lot of time already doing that. And so it didn't like strike me as like a novel idea as much. But I do like, aside from the fact that I was like already familiar with that. Yeah, it's an extremely gripping, horrifying idea. Yeah, it's great.
Yeah. So many stories obviously are just kind of built on other stories. Sometimes they're almost carbon copies. Sometimes they share a ton of similar elements, or they share the same core element. Whatever it is, it feels like if you like one and that's the one you came to first, that's the one you always think of as canon.
I totally agree with this. Yeah, I feel like this with Blake Crouch. I love Dark Matter because that's the first Blake Crouch book I've read. I've heard a bunch of other people in the Discord who are like, oh, I really like Recursion a lot more. And when chat with them, it's like, oh, well, they read Recursion first. And I think it's because like Blake Crouch kind of writes the same book.
That's an interesting like kind of ancillary to that. But yeah. I think if you fall in love with a story and then you read another similar story, even if it was written 35 years before the one you read, you're like, your mind is a little bit like, well, that one's the original.
Yeah.
The one I like is the first one, obviously. Like, they did it better.
Can I also, like, while I'm being the hater in this episode, though, let me also just throw out there that, like, truly great stuff that I don't feel like applies to, like, from our recent past. Like, I think if you read The Forever War before you read Starship Troopers, I think you would still be like, ooh, wow, Starship Troopers is really good. Like, I'm not saying Starship Troopers is better or anything like that. I actually don't think I think that. But
they're different. They're pretty different. I mean,
yeah, but they both got like
different though.
Power armor fighting aliens. Like they're in terms of that like similar, like feel similar vibe. Like,
well, maybe the answer is close, but maybe the answer is that since they're both good, they both have enough different elements, like time dilation and Forever War, which is really important, and the entire idea of like military good, war bad, dichotomy between the two.
Yeah.
And so they end up reading different. So maybe two great things will always read different if they're both great.
Yeah.
They can't be carbon copies. I don't know.
Okay, let me ask you. So here's my other bit, like my one other big thing before we get to post spoilers.
Oh, okay. Well, there's a couple more things to talk about.
Yeah, no. This is like my, what I'm bringing to the table.
Okay, well, you're not allowed.
Being the hater in the episode. So it felt to me like the book was trying to do, the first two books in particular were trying to do dramatic irony where like the reader knew much more than the characters about what was going to happen. But it just felt like a book that is going to be plot driven. That just feels like a really bad way to do it. Like it's not about the characters and their response. It's about the plot. But in both cases, in both books 1 and books 2, like you, the reader, know all the plot points like radically before the characters. And you just have to like watch the characters slowly figure them out for a long time. And it made me insane because the point of the books is the plot. It was like, well, why did you tell me the whole answer like 30% of the way through the book?
I don't know that that's true. I think it's true of some of it, but I also thought that there were a bunch of reveals and twists that were not revealed to the audience. We could talk about that more post spoilers.
Yeah.
But
okay, maybe we'll have to leave this one.
I also think especially, maybe you're right about book 2. Well, what I will say about book 2, pre-spoilers, is I thought Shift was by far the best of the three. I really, really liked Shift, and I thought it was a super, without saying much more, it's a prequel to Wool, and it shares none of the same characters, basically. And I thought that was one of the coolest moves. A lot of chutzpah to, like, write a sequel in a trilogy and just change it all. That's rare to see because it doesn't typically sell well, right? People naturally are like, well, I was liking this thing and now it's different people, and it totally works. I thought it worked brilliantly. And so I loved that tech. I admire Howey for that.
For sure. Yeah. I did like the second one more than the first one, but it had, in my mind, that same problem with like dramatic irony where the readers know. I actually liked the plot points in book 2, but like 20% of the way through book 2, I was like, oh man. That's actually not true. 20% of the way through book 2, I was like, wow, this is sick. And then 40% of the way through book 2, I was like, oh, wait, oh no, are we doing this again where I have to just read like so much more before we get to the part where the characters are caught up with what we already know. Book 3 was my favorite because he didn't do that anymore. There was way less plot stuff to get revealed in book 3, but he did not try to do his dramatic irony thing. So I liked the third book by far the most.
Okay, interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, I thought he landed it well, but I liked book 3 as well, but Shift was still my favorite, and if only because I thought it was novel to just completely change it up like that. Okay, should we move to our recommended media section?
Yeah, since we have literally no books to recommend. If you know some books where it's about where there's sort of this like people are getting tricked, the society's being misled sort of thing. Like we have a ton that we're about to tell you a bunch of like books and TV shows, or sorry, not books, not
games.
Books. We're about to tell you about games, TV shows, movies, but we really could not think of any books.
Yeah, let us know in the comments if you know of any. We'd love to read them. But we also think the reason we decided to do this is because that type of story really clearly lends itself well to screen, whether it's a movie, TV, or a game. There's obviously something there. Why it works really well in those mediums. And even for Silo, as I alluded to earlier, I think the show is incredible. It was definitely like the story feels like it was made for the screen. So why don't you hit us with one of your recs?
Okay, yeah, I'll go with the Fallout video games. I mean, they're great. And what I will actually recommend to truly everyone right now, if you have not played the Fallout video games, you should play Fallout 3 New Vegas. Fallout 3, original Fallout 3 is good, but Fallout 3 New Vegas is one of the best video games ever, and you should play it soon because video games only work for so long. I still see people talking about it and saying that it's still really fun, but like they get dated, and that game is starting to get old. Like the sooner you play it, the better.
That's true. Yeah.
And because the story is amazing. It's so fun to explore. There's just such hilarious stuff that happens. Fallout 3 New Vegas is like one of the best video games ever made. It's so good.
I know you're supposed to go through the mine pit on the way. There's some area you can access at the beginning of the game and go through the mine pit.
I think that you should try that. And see how it
that's
goes
all
for
I know
you.
is that meme is the mine pit meme. Okay, let's do another video game then. Horizon Zero Dawn. Very similar. What on earth when you start playing that game? It's like tribal peoples, but there's robot dinosaurs. What is happening here? And I thought it was the plot, particularly the first one, that Horizon Forbidden West, the sequel, I think is maybe the better game, but the first one, like the story is just mind-blowing. It's one of my favorite stories ever, and it very much falls into the category of people tricked. What's going on here? Just incredible plot mystery.
Yeah.
Movie?
Okay. Yeah, movie. I'm going to go with The 13th Floor, which is, man, I should have watched this more recently so I could think about how to talk about it without doing spoilers. To make sure I don't spoil anything, I think I'm going to just kind of shut up. But like, man, you should really watch The 13th Floor. If you like sci-fi and you're here, you like sci-fi. If you like movies, you have got to watch The 13th Floor. It's extremely interesting. It's extremely interesting. Cody, I know you haven't seen it. I want to talk more about it. Let me know if you've seen it. We could talk. It's probably not for the podcast, but anyway.
Great. Okay, cool. I'm going to watch it. And for television, we have also on Apple TV Plus, Severance, which I think, I'm going to say it, is the best show I've ever seen. I think
Whoa.
Every part of it, the production design, the camera work, the writing, the acting, the core plot is all at 100%. I don't think I've ever seen a better show, and I wish they would hurry up and release season 2.
I love
because-
Severance deeply. You
yeah.
recommended it to me, and it was the first show I watched after my son was born. And yeah, I love it so much. You're so right. It's so good. It's so
For those who don't know, the basic premise is there's a procedure you can have done to you to work for this specific company, Lumen. It's called the Severance procedure, and your brain, your memories are bifurcated from your work self to your home self. So when you go down the elevator to work, you're your own person, and it's just exploring the implications of that. And wow, it's really good.
It's
got
so
Adam Scott.
good. It's so good. Yeah, from Parks and Rec.
Yes, and among others. Okay, let's talk post spoilers.
Before we do, if you
yes.
are here and you are not yet subscribed, please do. It helps us a lot, and you'll find out about our next episode when it comes out. You can be here for Neuromancer. So if you're on podcast, subscribe there. If you're on YouTube, please subscribe. But please do push the button. We really appreciate it.
Thank you. Yes. And Brent, why don't you tell us what happens in all 3 of the Silo books, and I will move you along if it's taking a while, because it might.
Please do. If you don't want to hear spoilers, I mean, stop now. Here, it's good. We're about to do it. We're about to spoil it. Okay. Light refresher. We're going to touch lightly. Whole trilogy, lots of plot stuff happening, but here we go. So the first book is all about Juliet. She's like a maintenance worker in this silo. Starts to get weird vibes about what's going on. She thinks it doesn't seem like the mayor's really in charge. She gets out to clean, which is you get killed. They send you out to the outside world. But she gets her crew in the maintenance world to make her a real good suit. So she lives longer than they're supposed to, and realizes she gets to the top of this hill and is like, oh my God, there's more silos. So she goes down to finds another silo. Everybody in it is dead. She finds a few survivors. This guy's solo. He'll be important later. And gets back to her home, kills the evil head of IT. And that's kind of the first book, right? She doesn't intentionally kill him, but he does get killed.
He does die. Yes, Bernard dies. And so she has control of her silo again, Silo 17 or Silo 18. One of the two.
17 is the good one, 18 is the dead one.
Okay, cool. Yeah. And so that's where we leave off book 1, Wool, and we move to Shift, which is a completely different set of characters. It's about Donald or Troy, same guy, in 2 different timelines. One is he's a congressman in basically our world, but in 2050, working on this special project for this weird Senator Thurman, who is making silos near Georgia, purportedly as like a base for nuclear waste sites, but there's more going on, which we know. And then the other half of the book is about him as a character named Troy, who wakes up every 6 months from cryo sleep to do shifts, which is overseeing the other 40 silos and the people within them and trying to quash rebellions if they happen. And so we get to the end of why the silos are created. When Donald and everyone else goes into the silos for the first time, and then also up to the point in the first book that we got to, which is the rebellion in 17. As well as a story about the previous rebellion in 17. There's a lot going on in book 2.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I think the one other thing we should throw out there about book 2 is that the Senator Thurman, who built the silos, also created the environmental catastrophe that destroyed the world. He intentionally created a way to survive the thing that he then did to destroy the entire world. So, correct. The silos are created by the bad guys, not the good guys.
Yes. And then what about book 3?
Right. Dust. Book 3, Dust. Is about Juliet, and it brings Troy back, or Donald, brings them back together. They're all in like the simultaneous future present now. And it's about them trying to survive while Thurman is trying to destroy their silo. And they make it out. They just have to walk like a little bit, and then the world is fine, which is a little confusing. Let's talk more about that. But they get out. So yeah,
They do, and they realize that the cloud of shittiness, for lack of a better term, is actually finite, and a little bit beyond that, there's a bunker called the Seed that they found in old maps, which has all, plant seeds and food and supplies and whatever to remake the world, and the world is happy and healthy.
yeah, it's all green. So, okay, my first question is, if the whole world was green and like the nanobot plague didn't destroy the whole world, like wouldn't there be a lot of people alive all over the world? Like, what's the deal with that?
Well, if they made it into the silos, I mean, purportedly the reason Thurman did this is because nanobots were becoming an issue in the world, and terrorists and other nations were starting to weaponize these nanobots to be able to just kill people based on their DNA, like program it to certain people's DNA so they could just go in anywhere they could get into.
Too. So the whole world wasn't covered in like dusty nanobots, but he did send out nanobots to literally kill everyone.
Right, but he was like, oh, my nanobots will be the good ones, which will kill everybody because everyone's going to die anyways, and then clean the world of the bad nanobots so we can eventually live in it again. So kind of thin as a villain arc, although I do think it makes a little more sense as book 2 and 3 go on, and you get the he's lost the plot. He's lost his own reasoning almost, and now all he wants to do is this
he
project.
Actually worked for me. I buy I'm down with just an evil villain. The thing that I didn't buy with that is the U.S. government was down to build 50 of these silos to store nuclear waste, dude. So I don't mean dude. I'm not directing this.
Yeah,
to
without asking too many questions.
Yeah, and
and
nuclear waste is
his nanobot swarm.
Yeah, and the nanobots to kill everyone on the planet. You would need a lot of nanobots for that. Anyway, yeah, the U.S. government was just here, you can have $50 trillion. You can just have half.
I think there was I think there was some sort of hand wave to he had the vice president in his pocket and they did it all. But yeah, it was a little much. It was definitely thin. Again, a lot of stuff here. But the ultimate goal of Thurman and the Silo Project, there's 40 silos with Silo 1
I think there's 50
looking
silos,
over them.
Because there's one for each state's delegation of, only Democrats live. It was a bold move,
at the
Hugh
Democratic
Howey.
National Convention.
He only has Democrats survive the apocalypse. Anyway.
Yeah, the idea is that the silo will that only one silo will eventually be released once the people in Silo 1 decide they're the ones, we're trying to breed people who don't rebel and don't disagree, because that's what ruined the world, which is his ultimate idea for why he's doing this. And so the reason Silo 18 was put down is anytime there's a successful rebellion, they just
and I see where you're going with this. This is why
silo.
the people don't ask any questions and aren't curious, because they've been bred. But aren't they only one generation in also?
No, it's hundreds of years, I think.
No, didn't they say the whole thing was going to be 240 years? I thought they were 100 years in. Anyway, whatever.
Maybe.
They've bred curiosity out. It's fine.
And they also had memory erasing drugs for when there was a minor rebellion, and then they wiped records and wiped people's memories. I mean, there's a lot of, again, hand waving. But I just liked the twists and turns so much. The first idea that, you're introduced with that first story of Holson, whatever, the sheriff in, first
I
book,
like the sheriff
and his wife, his wife goes out to clean because she doesn't believe in it, but the last thing she sees is green world, and she's like, oh my God, the reason people always clean is because they're like, oh my God, guys, it's actually working, it's good out here, it looks good, and then they die. And it's a fake visor showing people the fake world to make them clean, to inspire people to continue with the project, but also so you're like, oh, okay, but that's obviously fake. But then also that's fake too. The world is fine beyond the sphere
they just have to
of the
walk
silo.
past the dusty bit. Yeah.
So there's a lot of twists like that, and I love the Thurman, all the twists in the second book with Thurman introducing the idea of the nanobots and why he's doing it, and then who gets to go into the silo and finding out. I mean, you obviously know Donald's Troy, but finding out who goes in there with him and finding out why, like Thurman's motives in the third book, and then tracking a lot of like what happened in Silo 17, and you're like, what is this rebellion? Oh, it was the previous rebellion that we're learning about now. There are just so many cool things, and I wonder if, I mean, what you're feeling, what I'm feeling is like, I'm enjoying reading basically an outline of novels, and you're like, dog, it needs to be a novel. Because that's kind of... I think
you perfectly summarized it, actually. Yeah, for sure. Yeah. So as you were describing this, so one thing that you mentioned that I think you agree with is that the characters are like real thin. In the first book, there's a lot made about how Juliet like never goes to see her dad. And there's like some drama with that. But then in the third book, she's like seeing her dad all the time, and he's like very involved. And I was kind of like, because I actually went a long way after I read the first book, I was kind of like, ooh, I don't like this. And so we agreed not to do it. And then someone recommended it, and someone at some point was like, hey, what if you guys did one where you disagreed? And we were like, oh, okay, maybe I should keep reading this. So anyway, there's a big gap between me reading the first and the third book. But in the third book, I was like, wait, did they make up sometime and I missed it? Or like, did we ever find out what was the deal with her and her dad? Like, what was the deal?
With the Thurman's
with Juliet
daughter?
And her dad. No, Juliet and her dad. Because like in the first book, she never goes to see him, and it's like explicitly made out there's like some sort of drama between them. But then in the third book, they're just like hanging out, and he's helping her. And I was like, did something change? And I forgot because it's been too long.
Yeah. So in the show, they fixed that by her dad is dead, and that's part of her motivation. And it's great. It works really well.
Okay.
Or maybe not. I don't know. He might be alive and coming in a later season, and they picked it that way. But yes, I do think that was, yeah. And her in the show, she has a relationship with the guy who is the reason Allison goes out to clean at the beginning of Wool. There's like a whole backstory and relationship where he's getting his information and Juliet's with him, and that's why she starts to question what's going on.
Oh, she knows the
yeah. And in Wool,
the sheriff or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah. In Wool, it's just like, and this guy was killed a while ago. So that's weird. But yeah, in the show they have a whole deal. So I think we have to wait a couple more years. Maybe the show will end up being the superior version of this.
Interesting. Okay.
We should also mention there's some short stories as well that are in a collection called Machine Learning by Hugh Howey that are like sequels to Silo. We've not read them, but people have given them. Some people have said they liked them, but a lot of people online seem to have thought they lost the plot a little bit. But worth mentioning nonetheless if you want a little extra.
A little extra. Okay. Well, sweet.
What did you think about the ending?
I like I like a happy ending
overall. Yeah,
they got out. They good.
Me too.
Good.
I think
I was actually one thing that he did that surprised me was the although when he did it, I was like, oh, this was actually good. The in the third book, it's like not going well in Silo 1 with Donald and his sister. It's like looks like they're going to get shut down by Thurman because Donald did a terrible job of killing Thurman. Anyway, but they meet that like guy who used to be in the Secret Service, and it was setting it up like the Secret Service guy and the sister were going to get out and go join the Silo 17 crew. And then the Secret Service guy got killed. And it was like one of the, I was like, whoa, I'm surprised. That does not happen a lot in these books. But and then I was like, oh, but this was actually great. He's a Secret Service guy. Like that's what he's, he took bullets for the team. Like anyway.
Yeah.
So no, I liked the end. It was like, I don't know. It's hard to
and I
like
felt,
a happy ending.
Yes. I thought with the novels like that, that's what you have to give your audience. Like you can't like land that ship any other way. I thought it was a good way to land it. If you're not like doing something where all of the characters are like really human and everything's really feels real from like a emotional level and a humanity level. You can't like do a bittersweet or something like that. So it's good. It's just like give the people what they want.
Yeah.
And
they also blew up Silo 1 so they can't kill the other silos, right? So they're still in their silos, but they're like no longer going to get killed by the people in Silo 1. So it's like, yeah, it's all good.
They get rid of the existential
Although
threat.
they did kill everyone on Earth. Still very
I
bad
also
ending.
liked, you bring up the Secret Service thing. I also liked all the characters in Shift. I really started in Wool. I didn't care as much about any of them. But like Donald and Allie and Thurman's daughter and Donald's sister, and Thurman. I thought like how he hit his stride with those characters, and they kind of kept me in the series.
I agree. Was Wool self-published?
I don't know. It was. I mean, it was short story.
I don't know either, but I agree that he like clearly was getting to be a better writer as this went on. I mean, good for him for achieving success with the first thing that was like highly unpolished, but yeah, he definitely is like a lot better by the end. Yeah.
Yeah. That's the Silo series. We hope you watch the show, read the books, whatever. Let us know what you think, and join us next time for Neuromancer.
Keep reading, everybody.
All right. Later, man.